Hello and welcome to the Green Collar Careers Podcast. I'm your host, Jose Almanzar, a practicing environmental attorney and former environmental scientist. This podcast is all about exploring careers in sustainability in the environmental field, what they look like, how to get started, and how to grow into them. Each episode, I sit down with professionals who have built meaningful careers in this space to hear their stories, how they got started, the challenges they faced, and the advice I have for anyone looking to break in or level up. Whether you're a student, a career changer, or just passionate about making a difference, these conversations will have something valuable for you. Thank you so much for spending time with us. Let's dive right in. Hello and welcome to the Green Collar Careers Podcast. I am your host, Jose Almanzar, and today I have the honor and the pleasure of sitting with us today, Robyn Rehak. Robyn, how are you?
I'm doing great, Jose. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, I'm so happy that we were able to make this happen. So Robyn and I have gone back and forth probably 17 times in the last month, it seems like. It's just been a crazy, busy summer for everyone, I think, with the Knicks making their playoff run and, baseball and the weather and everything. And I don't know if you have kids, Robyn, but I have kids. My schedule is like all over the place. You're shaking your head. Yes, you do have kids.
I do. I have three kids. They're mostly grown by now, but there's always a lot of busyness when it comes to even young adult kids. But to your point about this month and in June, and the Knicks win, and the weather. New York is beautiful in June, and it really just feels like overall New York's having a real moment in time that we really need it, doesn't it?
It is. And Robyn disclosed to me that her office, first of all, I should say, Robyn is the Chief Advancement Officer at the New York Restoration Project, one of the most important environmental conservation organizations in New York. We will get to that in a second. Most importantly, we need to talk about Nixon 5. Let's get that out of the way. Because Robyn disclosed to me that her office is right by Madison Square Garden.
Right.
And was that like like the craziest month for you?
Totally crazy, especially with the transit
Okay.
and the commute that made it extra crazy. But no, it's fantastic. It just feels like the most incredible shot in the arm, and a real renewed hope and excitement about the city, which I think New Yorkers really deserve.
Yeah. So where did you grow up, Robyn?
I grew up in New Jersey in the shadow of New York City. Spent a lot of time in New York as a teenager. I actually took acting classes in Greenwich Village as a youngster, and yeah. But I also grew up in the forested hills of New Jersey, and that's really where I think my love of the environment started, because the forest and the trees were my playground. I spent a lot of time out there as a kid, just exploring nature and observing nature. And really, I think that's really where I felt comfortable and safe in the forest. And I guess that's really where my love affair with nature really started as a young child.
Do you recall like a single moment, hiking or camping or in the woods that just kind of got you, I don't know, like that was transformative for you, or was it a slow burn over the years?
That's a great question. One, I think there's several moments actually. But one transformative moment for me was when my grandmother took me to see Yosemite National Park.
Wow.
And I was 13. I just turned 13, and I really didn't know much about the world except for my backyard. And when I saw the beauty, the incredible beauty, natural beauty at Yosemite, it was so awe-inspiring to me. It made such an impact on me, and I was overwhelmed by the beauty of nature and the awesomeness of nature. And from that point forward, I started to learn all I could about natural systems and ecology. It just really was a special area of interest for me. As a teenager, I thought I would become a medical doctor and go to medical school. And then the more I learned about nature and about the systems of nature, it's very similar to the human body, right? It's an organism, and everything works together. So I really became just completely obsessed with the way nature works and ecology, and then ended up devoting my life to the protection of nature and awareness and education of our natural systems and why they're so important to protect.
Robyn, I'm not saying this to pander to you. I don't need to pander to you. We already had a moment before we went live, and I know I'm already in your good graces. You just gave me chills, describing kind of your evolution into and love affair, honestly, with nature, because it sounds a lot like mine. I was a little older than you when I first had my kind of aha moment with nature, but I was 15, and it was in Yosemite, but it was a Nature Conservancy preserve in Western New York. And I just had this moment with nature where I just was like blown away by just the beauty and the awe-inspiring kind of like everything.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it was very, very binary. Like a light bulb went off in my head, and I was like, all right, I'm going to dedicate the rest of my life, whether it's career or otherwise, to like this thing, this planet, this systems, organism. And even today, I find myself drawn, not all of my leisure time, because I do have children, and sometimes it's like, all right, we're going to drive for 40 minutes to go to this dance competition.
Yeah, right.
But I do find myself now, especially as kind of in this chapter of my life, even going back and relearning some of the system science stuff, but now kind of with such a level of intensity and focus that I didn't have as a teenager and early 20s, that I'm like almost re-falling in love with nature.
I love that, Jose. I know what you mean. I can really relate to that. And one of the things I know you asked me earlier if I was reading any books or doing anything that really grounds me, and I wanted to share that
Yes,
the
please.
latest book I'm reading. I don't know if you've read this yet, but it's called The Hidden Life of Trees by
Mm.
Peter Wallenben. And I just find it fascinating. And it is also sparking my a renewed love for nature because two takeaways so far in the book. I'm only partially way through, but one is that trees do better when they're in a forest and they're together in community, which I think is fascinating. Okay, so that's one takeaway. And the second takeaway is that nature has its own timeline. Our human lives are very, very brief on this planet, as we all know. Trees can live for hundreds of years, so they have their own timeline. And then the earth itself is on its completely different timeline, it's on its own timeline. And that really grounds me. And I have to say that, given that we are in, I think, a pretty daunting time frame right now for all the things related to environmental protection and environmental justice, right? We're suffering a lot of setbacks politically and otherwise with climate change. It's a difficult time for those of us who have been in this field for a long time. But what gives me hope is that nature is resilient. And again, it has its own timeline. And so I think that it's a great lesson for us to really focus on our work and our contributions as individuals in green careers, to think of it as a relay race, that we're getting past the baton from the environmental advocates, the lawyers, the scientists, everyone that came before us, Jose, that established this great baseline of environmental work that is in danger, it seems, all the time, right? And some administrations and some years more than others. But we're in the relay race. So we find ourselves in a moment of time, and it's up to us to just do the best we can in the moment with what we have and be able to pass that baton to the next generation.
That's a beautiful recitation of really something that I think gets lost on a lot of us, because yes, the two greatest challenges, arguably not just to the planet but also to our species, are climate change and biodiversity loss and
Right.
everything that flows they're from and everything that's connected. And when you look at the gravity of the issues, it's enough to paralyze a person and to fall into deep depression. And frankly, one of my previous guests, Sam Kay, he's DC's air quality kind of program person over there. He was like, if you're not an anxious mess over what's happening with the planet, you're either a sociopath or you're not paying attention. I mean, it's a lot. And to your point, the planet has its own and the earth has its own timeline. And frankly, the planet dealt with issues before humans were here and will deal with issues after humans are here. And what grounds me is similar to what you just mentioned, Robin, is that these issues are not going to be resolved in my lifetime and unlikely in my kids or my grandkids or great grandkids' lifetimes, to be honest. But if I can do enough while I'm here to move the baton, to pass the baton forward, um, to lessen human suffering and to lessen fauna and flora suffering, um, it's inevitable that there is going to be suffering. It's just the nature of life. But if I can do my whatever part that is on my end to lessen it, then I feel like at the end of my story, then it would have been worthwhile. So I'm with you. You and I are aligned, and I'm actually looking forward to the other discussions we're going to have beyond this podcast because I think you and I are aligned on a bunch of different things. So, Robin, tell us about the New York Restoration Project. Just generally speaking, about the organization. What are you all involved in?
Um, Thanks, Jose. Yeah, the organization New York Restoration Project, also known as NYRP, was founded by the iconic performer Bette Midler in 1995. Most people don't know that Bette Midler grew up in Hawaii, of all places, because she's so associated with New York City. She lives here. She loves the city. She started her career here. But when she was earlier in her career, and when she had her daughter, she was driving her to school, and she realized that there were public parks in New York that were filled with garbage. And not just a little litter here and there. It was, she saw burned out cars. She saw, parts of refrigerators, and really a lot like a dumping ground, like basically public parks being used as a landfill and a dumping ground. And Bette thought, wow, I can do something about this. Somebody's got to do something. Maybe it just should be me. And so she catalyzed a movement. She worked with communities. She led cleanup efforts. She raised money. She built partnerships. And she established what is still thriving and growing today, which is the New York Restoration Project. So you might know that about 20 years ago, NYRP led with Mike Bloomberg the Million Trees Initiative in New York. So I'm proud to say that our organization really contributed to urban forest canopy cover growth well before it was even talked about as a remedy to climate change. So by increasing the canopy, we got ahead of it a little bit. Now, as you know, the New York City has its first urban forest plan just released. So we know there's more to do, but we at least had a head start with the great work that NYRP has done in the past. And today we are still doing just that. We're expanding forest canopy in High Bridge Park in Inwood in northern Manhattan. We own and operate over 50 community gardens throughout the city, and we have a very, very robust urban agriculture program where we train aspiring gardeners, community gardeners, and planters throughout the city. And we really focus our efforts on underserved communities. We have another program that's very robust and growing that started during the pandemic called Gardens for the City. And we started it because when we were out in our community gardens with our neighbors and our gardeners, we were asked to build gardens for other communities. So we have an application process. Anybody can apply. We're especially looking for communities that lack tree canopy, lack urban tree canopy. So if you're an organization, a library, a school, anything like that, you can apply to have NYRP come and restore your garden. So part of what we do is raise money to help restore and build people's gardens. And really over our 30-year history, well, actually, since the pandemic, we've built about 350 gardens throughout the city. And these gardens serve lots of different purposes. Some are with libraries, so they're a place of reflection and reading and a place for parents to gather for story time. And schools use them as, teachers will use them to enhance science curriculum. Small children learn about, in kindergarten and first grade, they learn about birds, they learn about trees. So having access to nature right in their community is a huge asset. It's a huge asset. So I'm really proud of the work that we do there. And so we keep on cleaning and greening. We've picked up, millions of pounds of trash across the city. We still do that. We actually have a great volunteer program. So we have lots of volunteers that come out and help us with building the gardens and restoring gardens. And we've just created such wonderful partnerships along the way.
Well, it sounds to me, first of all, thank you for all that you all do, because you were ahead of all of this, and now it's trendy to
Yeah.
say tree planting is the way to, improve people's health. Tree planting is the way to improve greenhouse gas, reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Planting trees is the way to improve, the urban heat effect in underserved community. Like, y'all were ahead of all of this, and I think in many ways you paved the way for organizations like the Nature Conservancy and the Bloomberg Foundations and a lot of these organizations that are like, you know what? Yeah, we need to, like, planting trees is the solution. So thank you for all of that. And I'm just going to say a few things. Um, I mentioned to you, and we know that you know this about me. I'm on the board of the Nature Conservancy's New York chapter. We just had a meeting 2 weeks ago, a board meeting, and we discussed extensively the urban forest project and that report and the concern. Beautiful endeavor and super aggressive. We're having an issue with nurseries and getting, like, trees, just having trees generally. Like, the need is there. I mean, if I had any money to buy farmland in, like, upstate New York or New Jersey, I would just be setting up nurseries left and right, because there's going to be a need for the next probably 20 or 30 years to just plant, just a
Yeah.
planting. And then the maintenance is a whole different story. Second of all, thank you for the work that you're doing in places like Highbridge Park and Inwood. I'm an immigrant from the Dominican Republic, and I moved as a kid, as an 8-year-old, to Washington Heights. So I played extensively in Highbridge Park, and my first baseball games were at Highbridge Park. A lot of my recreational time was at Highbridge Park. So that park, beautiful place, and holds a warm and dear place in my heart. So thank you for the work that
Great.
you're doing there. Yeah, and then also, like, the fact that yes, you can focus. There's we need trees everywhere, but the fact that you're prioritizing underserved communities, like, thank you for that. I think, as somebody that now lives in the suburbs, and I admitted to that. I grew up in the city, but once we started having kids, we decided to make the great migration out east to Nassau County, Long Island. We benefit from the county having just great infrastructure with trees and small little pockets of forest. Not everywhere, not all the neighborhoods, but certainly where we live. And it was a huge shift for me, because I only moved out there as an adult, and I was like, oh, I I can't believe my kids now get to benefit from all this. But then it made me sad about other kids that don't get a chance to experience that as often. So the work that you're doing is impactful and will impact generations to come. So thank you for all of that. So
It's very kind.
I'm going to ask you, and you might be the first chief advancement officer that I've ever spoken with ever. What is a chief advancement officer, Robyn?
A chief advancement officer typically leads fundraising, partnership development, and marketing and communications.
Got it. Got it.
In
Okay.
a
So you,
nutshell.
you're a high, you're a hy- you're a hybrid person. You wear many different hats. What is how does like what are some of the skill sets that make a chief advancement officer successful at an organization like New York Restoration Project?
That's a great question. And I think a lot of different skill sets really could lend themselves well to this role. But I really think that my underlying foundation of success, I really believe is grounded in my passion for this field and this movement. I really can't imagine being a chief advancement officer for any other type of organization other than an environmental one. So I feel really passionately about that. And that allows me to connect on a deep level with our supporters and donors because they too have a passion for this work and want to affect real change. And so I really feel like it's the greatest privilege of my career and my life to be able to facilitate that change in this role. I really see myself as a facilitator of philanthropic investment in the work that we do, and to ensure that everyone is aware of the work and everyone has an opportunity to plug in and participate, whether it's volunteering to pick up trash or plant trees, or even just to come to an educational event and just raise awareness about the importance of nature in cities, not just trees, but nature in general and the connection that we have to nature. And especially with the next generation. I think when you and I started to talk about how we were young and introduced to nature in different ways and how it started our interest, sparked our interest. Here in our urban environments, which are growing, most of the population, as you know, lives in urban environments, and that's just increasing. To not have nature accessible, I think there's a real loss there. And I think it's very important for children to have the opportunity to interact with nature at a young age, not just because it's healing, not just because it's interesting and fun, but also because it's hard to save what you don't understand and you don't know about, right? You're not aware of. So having those personal connections to nature for children, I think it's critical. In fact, I was just up at our park in Inwood. It's owned by the city, Highbridge Park, and we steward it. We steward about 80 plus acres there, and we also run the Sherman Creek Center across the street, which has a living shoreline. It has a teaching learning garden. And then we have a mushroom grove and a pawpaw grove and a nice grassy area and a pond. And I was speaking to the teachers at the school across the street, and they told me how much it means to them and the children to be able to come out at lunch and come and see nature. And the kids run over to the pond, they're looking for the ducks, they're looking for the frogs, they're identifying birds, they're learning about trees and nature. And the fact that it's right there, the teachers told me makes an incredible difference for them and the school and the students. So I really think everyone deserves access to nature in that way. And as long as I'm on this earth, I'm going to continue advocating for that and doing whatever I can to connect more people with nature.
I agree 8,000% with you on the importance of exposing children to nature at a young age and as often as possible. Um, exactly for the point that you raised, which is it's difficult to care about something if you haven't had any chance to experience it. And not to say that as an adult can't find that passion and that care, because certainly I empathize with people, places, and things that I have never had any exposure to. But I can only speak from my experience. Having my exposure to nature as a young man living in New York City, but having these opportunities to explore nature in the city and outside of the city, really highlighted and made things just so real in a way that reading it in a book or seeing it on TV just doesn't do for you. Um, you spent a significant amount of time, I'm going to say 15 years,
Yes, 15 years.
a significant amount of time of one's career at the organization that's near and dear to my heart, the Nature Conservancy. And then something happened and you made a shift, made a change. First, your experience at TNC, can you just, give me a quick highlight? What was that like for you?
Yes. Oh, I loved it. I loved every day of those 15 years at TNC, and I'm still quite close to many of my colleagues at TNC, and I really consider all of you board members and staff as part of our of our environmental family. So even though I'm working with different organizations now, I still have a really TNC has a big place in my heart. And it's a pleasure to be part of the Forest for All Coalition, led by Tammy Lynn on the staff at TNC New York City. So I do get to still work with TNC, which I really appreciate. But I started my career really as a student activist at the University of Vermont. I was an environmental studies major, and we had a presentation by a member of the Rainforest Action Network that came to the UVM campus. And there was no tropical forest or rainforest awareness or education organizations at the time. So I just raised my hand. I said, "This is for me." And I offered to start the first student chapter at UVM of Rainforest Action Group. So I did that and led that effort there. And that was really incredible. I was able to be invited to speak on panels, and I was able to write articles about tropical forests. I actually did a semester abroad in Ecuador, and I spent I was able to do an independent research study where I was invited to visit a Shuar village that's indigenous tribe that lives in Ecuador and has been under intense pressure and still is from extractive industries, cattle ranching, things like that. So I was able to hear from an indigenous community that had lived in harmony with nature for thousands of years, firsthand the issues that they were facing in struggling to keep ownership of the land, keep the rights to the land, and continue to steward the land properly, for generations to come. So that really affected me, and I wrote my undergraduate thesis on the relationship of people and trees, both there in Ecuador and in Vermont, where the maple syrup industry is big, and the whole towns have their identity is really tied to the sugar maple in Vermont. So I found that, that was very interesting, but it really drove home to me that we all need trees and we all have a relationship with nature that needs to be valued and protected, no matter where you're from. And that people who are, on the front lines of conservation, like indigenous tribes, really need our support. They really do.
Before we continue, I want to take a quick moment for those of you listening who might be thinking, I want to work in this space, but I don't know where to start. If that's you, I created something called the Green Pivot Map, a simple 90-day framework to help you clarify direction, translate your existing skills, and take strategic action toward environmental or climate work. It's not about going back to school or starting over, it's about positioning. If you'd like a copy, just message me Pivot on LinkedIn or shoot me an email at josealmanzaresq.com. Or you can also check the link in the show notes. All right, let's get back. I man, the one thing and it's my freaking podcast, so I could make this as long or as short as possible. And honestly, but I want to be cognizant of like your time and everyone's time. I could honestly speak with you for hours about this, which is why I'm so excited for our next few conversations. But I am in the middle of my second re-listen to Braiding Sweetgrass.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, speaking about indigenous and trees, and I just listened to the chapter where she discussed the mapling ceremony and all the work that she, exposed her young daughters to all that. The chapter is called, I just pulled it up on my phone, Maple Sugar Moon. It's under the Tending Sweetgrass part of the book. I was at the gym listening to this, and I shouldn't listen to this book while I'm at the gym because, like, I'm literally trying to bench press like 200, like 250 pounds, but I've got like almost like tears coming down my eyes, like listening to this book. The way I know it's really paradoxical and silly, but there's a certain kind of connection that traditional ecological knowledge, whether it's American indigenous or otherwise, African or other parts of the world, um, they have it right. They have it right. This connection, the world around us is animate. It's alive,
Yeah.
and not just the trees and the animals, but the streams and the atmosphere and the rocks. There's like an animism to the earth, and once you start recognizing that, then you can respect it for the personhood that it merits. And it's I don't prolesticize. I'm not getting on a soapbox in the middle of Madison Square Garden in front of 34th Street telling people that they need to reconnect with the planet.
Maybe you should, Jose. I
But
would fully support that.
you know what? I'm maybe when my kids go off to college and I can
Yeah.
finally say, I'm finally going to be unhinged, but like in a good way.
Yeah, right.
I'm 100% with you. I'm sorry that you had to experience kind of that whole the experience of speaking firsthand with Ecuadorian indigenous people about the struggles. I'm sorry that they had to go through that, but I'm grateful that you were able to experience that because it sounds like that was extremely important for you.
Yes, very, very important. And it really energized me to realize that I had a voice. I had privilege growing up in the United States as a white person, that I had access to, different things that certainly an indigenous tribal person would not have in terms of, trying to make a difference, trying to enact change. So I tried to really raise awareness of what indigenous tribes were facing, and I became a lobbyist. So I became an environmental advocate for environmental advocates in Albany, New York, and I worked on many, many different issues. I was writing legislative summaries of like 110 bills every legislative session. But I have to say, it was back in the day where the environment was getting a lot of attention and a lot of support, bipartisan support across the aisle. So we were able to really be successful in ways that today it would be a very different story. So two of the biggest successful campaigns we led, one was on childhood lead poisoning prevention, which created the landmark law in New York State that many other states followed in terms of ensuring that children were protected more from exposure to lead in pipes and paint and soil. So that was a major environmental justice win that we were able to push forward through lobbying and coalitions and organizing and really drumming up bipartisan support. And the second one was working, which was a real honor, working in tandem with the Cree community in Canada to prevent the damming of James Bay. The Hydro-Quebec, which is a major electrical utility in Canada, was planning to create another dam to provide more electricity. And we found out that the electricity was primarily being created to be sold to the state of New York. So the leader of the Cree tribe came to Albany and met with environmental advocates. And so myself and my dear colleague with the Sierra Club, Shelley Kath, we teamed up and we organized a campaign to stop that damming of James Bay and to really try to convince Governor Mario Cuomo at the time, I'm dating myself, to cancel those contracts with Hydro-Quebec. And we were successful. And that was a huge win for us. So it was a privilege to be able to help not the Ecuadorian tribe necessarily, but this other tribe in Canada to protect their homeland.
Well, it planted that whole experience in Ecuador planted kind of the seed in you, and again made you realize like I have a voice and I can effectuate change using that voice. Was Environmental Advocates of New York, was that your first kind of full-time job out of undergrad?
Yes.
Do you,
Yes, I was really lucky. I
yeah,
was an
how'd you come about
advocate.
that? Yeah, how'd you come
Yeah.
about that?
Well, on campus, I was an advocate, and I also took a summer job working for Vermont Public Interest Research Group, which really was fundraising. They literally dropped us off in a neighborhood, and we would go door to door. And I don't know if you've seen that before, but canvas for support.
Oh yeah,
So yeah,
NYPERG. I remember NYPERG used to do that with kids, and
yes.
yeah, I've given to the I've given to many pergs.
Okay, so you know the drill. So I ended up working for the Pergs, and I part of my environmental studies curriculum, I had wonderful teachers, and part of the curriculum was, look, you students need to get out there and you need to start interviewing, having informational interviews with people in the environmental fields that you see yourself, being interested in. So I was able to interview with a number of different state agencies and just informational interviews. And I had an informational interview with the head of environmental advocates, and he lost his lead lobbyist about a month later, and he called me up and he said, "Would you?" Want to come work for me in Albany? And I said, absolutely. I'm packing now. Like I'm there. So it was the first time actually getting a paycheck other than VPER, for doing advocacy. And I had been doing it for free and would have continued to do it for free if I could. So it was incredible. It was just an incredible experience to be actually to know that I could get paid to do
You
what I wanted to do.
you mentioned something. So this was in a job that you found. First of all, there was no LinkedIn then.
Yeah.
You don't have to age yourself. I'm going to age both of us because I think we're around the same age. There was no LinkedIn then. There
No.
may have been Craigslist. There may have been a few job boards, but this was an approach which I encourage people to do, which is go find out what you want to do, find out who's doing it, and then don't go asking them for work because that's
Yeah.
a little odd to do right off the bat, but start just having informational interviews and discussions. Would
Exactly.
you recommend that today to college sophomores or juniors who are thinking about what they're going to do after they graduate? Would you still recommend that?
Absolutely, and I do. I have made it a real priority to mentor younger people coming into the field. So even amongst my friend and acquaintance group, if someone has a child that's entering college or interested in the environmental field, informally they will call me and say, "Can you talk to my son? Can you talk to my daughter?" And I always say yes. Every single time, I will always take that call. Um, right? It's important. It's really important. I feel like we have to model that. We have to model the and mentor the next generation and really like walk the walk and try to be setting a good example for them. And I think the best example we can set, and at least my view on it, is to be inclusive, encouraging, and really emphasize to the student or the individual looking to get to this kind of work, like really play to your strengths, really know yourself and know your strengths. And I usually tell a funny story that when I was taking a ecology class, I was in the field counting frogs in a vernal pond, and I realized, you know what? I love this. But I don't want to live here. Like I want to visit the science and counting the frogs, but I don't want to be doing this every day. This is just not for me. I'm a people person. I'm extroverted. I love writing and thinking and brainstorming about projects and solutions. I really don't love counting frogs and putting the data into a spreadsheet and doing mathematical modeling. It's
Can
really
I
not
tell
for
you
me.
something? Can I tell you something so funny? So
Yes.
I started my career as an environmental scientist. So I was a field person, and after about 2 years, I swear, Robin, that's almost the same discussion with myself.
No way.
I was like, I love being out in nature recreationally, but doing site surveys and then like spending 3 hours in like the town of so and so's like basement library, pulling up like, records from like the 1920s, and then inputting all that data into a template. I was like, oh my God, this was great to learn, but like not my jam for the rest of my life. I had
Right.
almost the same exact thing.
Isn't
Um,
that funny? So you know yourself, right? And that's I think really important for young people in any field, but especially the environmental field. As you and I have talked about, there are so many ways to get involved. You don't need to have a science degree. You don't need to have, and it's okay if you don't want to do tree surveys or, go in the basements of the town and research records and put them in templates. It's okay if you don't want to do that. That's not what it's all about. And in fact, organizations need so many skills. We need communicators, we need lawyers like yourself, we need,
fundraisers and
accountants. Yeah,
development people like
yes,
yourself.
yes, exactly. It's really interesting, Jose, because fundraiser wasn't even a job when I graduated college. I'd never even heard of it. And yet here I am now as chief advancement officer.
And
And
by the
right,
way, in many ways, the organizations, not I'm not going to say that they wouldn't be able to run without people like you, but certainly the work that you do enables the organizations to then leverage people, money, and resources to do more impact. So super important. Um, Robin, so it sounds to me that you have a lot of these conversations with young people, whether they're just starting their careers or maybe mid career. Do you take a different approach to somebody who's been perhaps working in the space in a space, not environmental, for about 10 or 15 years, let's say, and then they want to pivot into environmental work? Is there a difference in advice that you give to that person?
Um, yes and no. I think the first advice of knowing yourself and your strengths and really playing to your strengths, I think is valid for anyone at any age, right? Even as a retirement job, once you retire, you might be looking for a new gig. I would say play to your strengths then too, right? But I think in terms of like a mid-career professional, I've actually had the privilege of working with people who were mid-career business professionals in, say, the pharmaceutical industry or other industries who had a revelation one day and said, you know what? I want to spend the rest of my career working in the nonprofit sector. Like, what can I do? How can I help? And I've seen folks like that go on to become executive directors of organizations using their business skills. If they have an MBA, for instance, and they need, good project management, financial management, budget projections, that type of mindset, that could lend itself very well to leadership roles or C-suite level roles at organizations. I've also seen people who were mid-career in project management, and they've translated those skills to, for instance, being a member of an advancement team where they're running looking at all the revenue, helping organize the pipeline of working with donors, helping do data analysis, and applying their skills that way. So I think the sky's the limit. I know organizations often employ lawyers for, legal advocacy work. Many organizations will do that. So I'm trying to think if there's any other writers, communications, and marketing. We have a social media manager here who majored in film and is using their skills in film to help tell our stories online in an effective way.
So what do you tell to the person who says, Robin, I'm really passionate about, let's just say it's like coastal restoration. They've spent the last, 15 years off the coast of whatever, Maine or the Berkshires, who knows? And now they're, kind of in a later chapter in their life, and they're like, I really want to do work in the environment in coastal restoration, but I don't have a science degree, Robin. Like, and I've been doing marketing for, a bag producer, for the last 20 years, and just I don't know how I'm going to break in. Like, what do you tell that person?
Well, I would tell that person first, think about what you love to do. And if you're in marketing for, a bag producer, but your love is the coastline and and the marine environment and ecology, and you have the skill set of a marketer. So you understand how to write copy, you understand how to connect to an audience and understand an audience, start thinking about how you could apply your skills, and it could be something where you might just volunteer for an organization for a little bit to see if it's a good fit for you. So perhaps there's a marine organization that you could volunteer that for. I know when I was even a student in Vermont, I would write articles for free for local papers on the environment, and so I was able to contribute in a small way to education. Um, just as a volunteer. So I would definitely encourage that. I think volunteering and networking that way can be very, very effective for folks who are looking to actually have a paid job in the sector. But if you're so lucky as to not necessarily need to have a paycheck, and you're at that point in your career where you're thinking about retirement, then certainly volunteer service, board service, things of that nature, donations. If you can donate, if you can have a peer fundraiser, maybe for your birthday or something, you could raise money for the organizations doing the work that you're really passionate about, and be part of it that way, because donors are partners in this work. So, no matter what your industry is, what your business is, if you can contribute in just even a small way, I've seen it be so fulfilling and rewarding for people to know that they've helped make a difference. And I would say, partner with others, right? Partner with your organizations, meet people, maybe attend like a beach cleanup so you can start meeting people in the community that are active, because it's really the power of community and people working together. Just like the trees in the forest, we're stronger together. We really are. So I would say, connect with your fellow environmentalists and get to work in whichever way, feels good for you, and you can find a place for yourself.
Robyn,
We need you.
we can you say that one more time? We need you.
Yes,
We
we
need
need
you.
you. We need everybody. And even if you're in your own industry, say you're a scientist at a pharmaceutical firm, can you join a green team? Can you try to promote environmental ethos from within? This is a community where we need everybody everywhere to really lean in, and have these conversations and advocate. Because one of the things I really learned the kind of the hard way, or was a hard lesson for me, is that the systems that we have in place, and the economic systems, the political systems, the world that we live in, they're not designed to protect the environment. So there really needs to be a lot of change, fundamental systemic change. And for that, we really need everyone, not just environmental advocates, yelling from the forest. We need people embedded in the systems to really help affect change.
100%. Thank you for saying what needed to be said, which is that our current systems, and love it or hate it, I live in America. I can't speak for everyone that's listening. I live in the U.S. We live in a capitalist society, and by nature, capitalism is an extractive system that extracts resources and puts values on things, and then creates more value out of that thing. And the whole system is extractive. It's really not meant to be regenerative. It's really not to be restorative. So we do need more people to bring that voice to whatever spaces they occupy, whether it's a professional space or a personal space, and to start having these conversations, because you don't know what your opinion how it will impact, somebody that's listening.
That's right. It
Um,
could really lead to real change.
it could. So it sounds to me that if you are a person, and correct me if I'm wrong, Robyn, but you're saying you need to be out there. You should
Yeah,
be out there. First of all, you need to know yourself. So, like, do that self-assessment and know what your strengths are. If you don't want to be in the field, learn that about yourself or know that about yourself. If you do want to be in the field, then maybe lean into what your skills and your strengths are. And then start having some informational interviews with people doing the stuff that you want to do. I mean, I think that's good advice for anyone, whether you're a college student or someone that's in their 50s looking for a career pivot. Like,
Absolutely.
and then start just being out there. You will be, first of all, I've found that this, and I'm just putting all environmental kind of people in one. I'm painting with a very broad brush, but I found that the environmental space is one of the more inviting spaces like out there. People love speaking about what they do because it's impactful, and people also love when new people want to enter their space. And there's not this air of exclusivity or you can't sit with us. It's more like, oh no, there's plenty of space for you here, exactly in the condition and with the background that you are. I love about this space.
Me too. It's really important. And it wasn't always that way.
Fair
It
enough.
wasn't always that way, but it's grown to be more inclusive. And I would argue more about the human nature interface than it ever was before. And I think that's much for the better because we are a part of nature. We are not separate from nature. So the old way of protecting nature about, building a fence around it, those days are gone. Those days are long gone. And today it's about community, and it's about being stronger together and ensuring that that nature is considered, as a priority in the systems that we exist in today.
100%. Robyn, I could speak with you literally, I think, all day. If I didn't have responsibilities as a parent and as an attorney for my clients, I probably would just quit and speak with you all day. Um, any,
I would love
any,
that.
any final words for our listeners out there that might be, encouraged and thinking about joining kind of the work that you do or environmental work generally and sitting on the sidelines? Any advice for that person?
I would say that we need you. You're valued. Your voice is important. Your opinions are important. Whether you're an artist, whether you're a writer, a musician, a scientist, join us. Come out. Get to know your neighbors. Get to know your fellow, your peers that think the same way that you do, because there's really strength in numbers. And there's a role for you. And even if you don't know what it is yet, I think it will be revealed in conversations that you might have and activities that you attend. And certainly here in New York City, there is no lack of opportunities to connect with nature. We have amazing organizations. My organization, NYRP, has a lot of volunteer opportunities. We have a calendar on our website. You can plug in anything that you are interested in. But there's also many other organizations that are absolutely wonderful across the city. And a quick Google search will give you a lot of information. And certainly, if you are a mid-career professional or a student or young person starting out and you'd like to know more about advancement or would like to speak to me, I encourage you to email me. My email is on my website, on our website, and I'm always happy to talk to the next generation of advocates, even if they're as old as I am.
Robyn, thank you so much for spending time with us today. Everyone, look up Robyn Rehak at New York Restoration Project. She's also on LinkedIn. And certainly just want to say thank you again, Robyn, for all the work that you and your organization are doing, and you're impacting not just the city, but the rest of, I think, frankly, the country and the world, one tree at a time. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jose, for this great opportunity and all the amazing work that you do to connect more people with nature and advance the protection of our beautiful planet in all that you do. So thank you.
Thank you, Robyn. We'll talk soon, okay?
Okay. Take care, Jose.
Bye. Thanks for listening to the Green Collar Careers podcast. If you're realizing that your current work no longer fits, or you're feeling pulled toward environmental or climate work, but aren't sure how to make the transition, you're exactly who this podcast is for. I've developed a simple framework called the Green Pivot Method. It's designed to help professionals reposition their existing skills and take intentional steps into environmental careers over the first 90 days. You can get a copy by messaging me Pivot on LinkedIn or visiting my website, josealmanzaresq.com. or you can use the link in the show notes. If this episode was helpful, please subscribe, leave a rating, and share it with someone else who's trying to build a more purpose-driven career. I'm Jose Almanzar. Thank you so much for listening. This is Green Collar Careers.